All right, here we are. Is South Carolina at home taking on Ole Miss? Ole Miss coming into this one as a 9-point favorite. Ole Miss was probably the second biggest headline coming out of week 5 and being at home and you take that loss to Kentucky. Me being a South Carolina fan, I wish they would have won that game and you stroll into this one because you got LSU at LSU coming up next week. So you can maybe catch somebody kind of sleepwalking. But I think this is one of the big issues that we've had in college football right now with a lot of these programs that set up these schedules this way, where you have a full month of games and you don't play nobody. You're going into your first test, which is a conference game at that, and your only games you played has been Furman at home, Middle Tennessee at home, at Wake Forest in front of who knows 12 people, and then Georgia Southern, right? And then you go take on Kentucky, who is just came off of a heartbreaking loss to Georgia where they pushed them, and now you got to come compete with them. And I think what happened was in that locker room, those players they're high and mighty because Lane Kiffin is talking them up. He's saying, "Hey, this is y'all's year." Everybody at Ole Miss is saying this is the best team Ole Miss has had in program history. Everybody's talking about this is your year to make the playoff. This is supposed to be this and this, and now you sitting here with one conference loss, and you a quarter into the season. You still got a lot of games to play, and not only a lot of games, a lot of your bigger games are coming on later on down the road. And now you got to hold it together. What I will say about that game, because I'm just touching on a couple points coming out of that game, because it's important coming into this one. Ole Miss has a problem right now, and their biggest glaring issue was their O line. Their O line could not hold up against Kentucky's D line. Kentucky was not having to blitz really anybody consistently throughout the game. They were getting home with 4 guys, sometimes 3 guys, and by halftime, that's when I kind of tuned into the game after half. Jackson Dart, he was getting to the point where he was seeing ghosts. He's sitting back there, and you would see the D line would just not even get past the O line, but they would just kind of show like, oh, I'm getting ready to beat my guy, and you see him already ducking in the pocket while he's holding the ball. Very inaccurate, and that's kind of been now you look at that and say, all right, how are we looking at Jackson Dart? Is it if we rattle him, does everything else fall apart? Because if you look at go back and look at their top receiver. I'm gonna get into receivers in a little bit, but you look at Henry Parrish. No, not Parrish. Trey Harris,
Yeah,
who
Trey
is
Harris.
yeah, Trey Harris, which is arguably one of the best receivers in college football. He's showing out throughout the first quarter of the season. He still winds up with 176 receiving yards, and you still turn out with only 17 points. So you're getting your yards, you're getting your production, but it's not equating into points. And I think the time of possession had a lot to do with this game. Also, Kentucky was not letting Ole Miss get this ball back very often. They were just chipping away down the field each and every time they went there. Now, all right, here's where we're getting into this game, and mind me, I'm gonna give you some stats, and I'm gonna jump off the cliff. South Carolina fan, I got to do it week in, week out. There's no escaping it. You know what time it is? It's October, which means it's Cocktober. We here. It's time. We have arrived. It is Cocktober. We're going off the ledge. We're going off the deep end. And not only is it Cocktober, but you're catching South Carolina off of a bye. South Carolina is still very, and I'm going back into the statistic part. I'm looking very, very, very rational. You're still very angry and upset over what happened with LSU. And Drew, you've mentioned this before, whether it be last season and beginning of this season when it comes to South Carolina. If South Carolina wants to move into that next tier of teams, that Missouri, that A&M bubble, the Tennessee bubble, even though Tennessee's moving up, this is one of the games where you gotta get it. You gotta get it. They're coming to you. You got a sold out crowd. You've shown that your defense is the best that it's been in maybe over 7 to 10 years since the red runs that y'all had where y'all had double digit wins. Everything is lining up for you to go. Let this be the takeoff point of where you're about to take this program to where it's go. Beamer has it going in the right direction, but these are the games you got to get. You let the LSU game slip out your hands. We missed that week. We didn't review that game, but even take the refs out of it, you let that game slip out of your hands. I'm not blaming the refs, but you had it. You had the game won. You do one or two things different, you can win that game, that football game. And you coming into this one, Ole Miss has the number one run defense in the country. South Carolina is a run heavy team. You're getting Lenore Sellers back, which he's questionable on the injury report, along with Rocket Sanders. But we all know Lenore's has been off for 3 weeks. Rocket's been off for 2 weeks. They both supposedly only had small ankle injuries. They're playing in this game.
Yeah.
You've got a top 15 team coming to you. You're playing in this game. They're not sitting. Your main thing is to run the ball. Now, albeit that number one ranking has been against the competition they've been playing against. They ain't played nobody yet. So stats can only be stats for so much. South Carolina has but hold on. Ole Miss's pass defense is 72nd in the country right now. And on top of that, they are 124th in the country penalty wise. They are one of the most penalized teams in the country. And 80% of those penalties are coming in the secondary. Their back end, they hold a lot and they pass interference a lot, which is how Kentucky attacked them so much. It was at one point in that game where Kentucky had got all the way to the 40-yard line and they had 3 consecutive holding and pass interference calls against Ole Miss that basically put them right up to the doorstep of the goal line, back to back to back. South Carolina has the number 9 pass defense in the nation and the second best in the SEC. Everything's lining up for you to sit your defensive line down and say, go get them. Go bring the same type of intensity and energy that you had with LSU, replicate it, do it again here. Go get Jackson Dart, get him rattled, get him inaccurate. Can you go attack and slow this team down and jump on them early? Because Ole Miss to me really seems like a team that they have to have the lead for them to take off. If they're playing from behind, they look like a completely different team than they do when they have the lead. Can you hop on them early and really rattle them, get the lead, let the crowd get behind you? Because I'm gonna go ahead and get into it. This is so far the quote unquote the Juice Wells game. The fans here are furious about what happened last year. He quit on the team, bar none. Forget what he got to say about it. He quit, played the Georgia game, scored his touchdown in the Georgia game, sat out the rest of the season, transferred to Ole Miss. Now he's like, oh, now he left South Carolina where he was the number one option. Now he's the number 3, number 4 option at Ole Miss. Albeit, go on, kiss yourself. We'll be booing from the crowd, so on and so forth. Sold out crowd. You got to win this game. My prediction for this game right now, I got South Carolina taking it. I think that this is striking up to be. We've said it before with Ole Miss. It's the same boat as Missouri. When you get that first loss, how far do you let it tumble? I think this is just a recipe for disaster for Ole Miss. I think you're coming into this game a very hostile environment. It's Cocktober. People are going to be going crazy in Willie B. I'll be there. It's going to be a wild environment. Can you survive your first road game? None of these players have played in a meaningful road game this season yet. And then you're looking over your shoulders at the same time I got to go to Death Valley for a night game next week. Everything is lining up for you to just say, hey, we probably going to fall apart. And Sean, we mentioned it a little while ago. If Ole Miss loses this game, what does their season look like? This is 2 not only losses, these are 2 conference losses now, early in the season. So for me, forget the spread, forget everything. It's Cocktober. South Carolina's going to win this one. Give me South Carolina has not scored less than 30 points a game. Give me 30, 31-27, 31-28. I got South Carolina winning this one.
Yeah, I think when it comes to this game right here, it's interesting, man. If Ole Miss didn't lose against Kentucky, I would have picked South Carolina 100% to win this game and commit an upset versus a top 5 team at that point. I thought it would have been. But now what we're looking at today, I still think Ole Miss is on upset alert. Let me just go ahead and get that statement out there, point blank, period. Just because I think that after a Kentucky loss, it's kind of like, okay, we got to look at ourselves in the mirror. I don't think it was anything that Kentucky really did to really just whoop Ole Miss. I thought it just Ole Miss just never got in a groove, which you can't do that in a game, and especially in this conference. If you ever not get in your no, let me change that. If you ever have to only get in your groove to win games, that's not how SEC football works. So we really got a lot to focus on when it comes to what Ole Miss's identity is, and it can't just be in and out every single game trying to put up 70 points. It's not going to happen. So for South Carolina, I think the key to this, man, we have to have a defensive game plan that puts pressure into Jackson Dart's face. Because man, you said it. When he doesn't feel like he has time in the pocket to really to get to his second or third read, he's a different quarterback, which I think that got exposed last weekend. Yes, you can still get numbers, but the efficiency of how you're doing things is not winning football. So you get into a game plan where you're trying to find that spark and it just never comes against a team that just truly has your number on offense and defense. Just truly has your number. And I think South Carolina's defense line is better than Kentucky.
Yes.
I think you got superstars on defense for South Carolina that are better than Kentucky. So for Ole Miss, it's kind of going to be like, dang, we got done with one people that we thought we were better than just to run into another team that's actually showing that they're better than us in the trenches. 'Cause I think that's how you beat Ole Miss. Beat them up in the trenches. It messes up the whole flashiness of their offense. Lane Kiffin wants to be flashy. He wants to be hoorah, who that. He wants to try to show off as much as he can because I think that's his key to recruiting. I think that's his true key to recruiting. Say, you're gonna come to my school, I'm gonna put you on the billboards, we're gonna have you flashing down the sideline, scoring touchdowns, just like Trey Harris and just throwing darts like Jackson Dart. I think that's his motivational pitch to people. And when that gets messed up, you don't have another piece you can pull out the mud to really show your team this is how else we can win games outside of what we've been shown. So for South Carolina, this sets up as a win. Now, that's my real take on Ole Miss. My true take has to be on the South Carolina Gamecocks because it is in your hand. It's in
Hmm.
your hand, and it's something that I've really seen them fail, or not really fail, but I haven't seen them be as consistent as it over the past 3 to 4 years in the Beamer era. Is snatching games away when it's in your hand to snatch it away. I think South Carolina's momentum is going to have them on a tear early in this game, kind of how you saw in the LSU game. I think they can start it out in that aspect. I think Sellers is going to be perfectly fine. Everybody trying to say he's going to be limited running. I don't see that. When you get adrenaline pumping with energy injuries like that, you really don't feel them unless somebody hits that. It kind of throws me back to Patrick Mahomes a couple years ago when he was on that show called Quarterback on Netflix, when you kind of saw his ankle injury. He was able to do the certain flashy stuff that was happening until somebody hit that ankle. Now it's going to be the same thing for Sellers and Sanders on that running aspect of it. I think you have to be able to pound the ball to be able to loosen Ole Miss up in the back end to be able to hit some home run shots. That's what I think the game plan has to be. And then defense, man, we got to send all the fancy blitzes we can early. I need a blitz heavy first quarter for South Carolina to really just to get Ole Miss off their platform. I think when you show them off that they can't be on their platform all game long, can't be down the distance all game long, they get frustrated. That's what I feel like. They get frustrated and they get sloppy. So South Carolina has the recipe to be able to do those things for Ole Miss, and I think it is a winnable game. I honestly think it's going to be another medium, the low scoring game. I really don't think it's going to be a lot of flash in it because I think it's going to be a game that's going to be around in the trenches. So I got South Carolina actually sneaking this one away. I think they're going to be up by 3 points late in the game, and I think a missed late game field goal again in William Bryce Stadium is going to be what seals the deal for Ole Miss in their second straight SEC loss this season. And for the answer about what happens to Ole Miss after this, they fall off the damn wagon. Because I really got three major things going for Ole Miss. Losing against Kentucky, I thought was major. I think they're going to lose this game, and I think they're going to lose their third straight SEC game next week in LSU and Death Valley. Because I just don't think they have the talent to be able to go in there and win that game. So to me, Lane Kiffin, I am in a total 180 from where I was on you last week versus where I am on you today. And I'm really kind of down on the coaching series that you've been putting on. And I think, like we said, maybe podcast 2 or 1. I think Lane Kiffin might be out of Ole Miss by the end of the season if he can't turn the ship around. So I got a lot of big points coming to this game. But from what South Carolina's momentum is right now, I see them on that cusp, man. I see them on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yep.
truly actually have confidence that they can get over that hump. And I think this is going to be that big, to me, a statement Beamer win in his reign as a South Carolina head coach. But he's got to pull it out, let it fall into your hands, let Ole Miss make all the mistakes they're going to make, and just capitalize on a team that I think is still trying to find themselves versus a team in South Carolina that I think knows who they are. They just got to be healthy. So I got South Carolina winning this one by 3.
The one thing that Beamer cannot do is let his team get rattled by Ole Miss moving the ball up and down the field. When I watched the Kentucky game, one thing Ole Miss did very well is they moved the ball up and down the field. I love the fact that Lane Kiffin can draw plays up to get receivers open on screens, curls, digs, drags. He uses every part of the field on offense to put himself in a position to where he can score. The problem is in the Kentucky game, he didn't score the ball. He
Right.
moved it very well from the 20 to the 20, but never punched it into the end zone. And I said to myself, as I'm watching this game, I'm like, this is Lane Kiffin's deficiency. He's great from 20 to 20. It takes a great, an elite play caller to take the ball from the 20 to the end zone. Okay. I'm not saying anybody can move from 20 to 20. That takes some skill too as a coach, but the field condenses. You don't have as much room to work. You got to have all elements of your game in place in order to take it from the 20 to the goal line. And Lane Kiffin missed on that against Kentucky. Um, Whether he can make that work against Carolina, I don't know. For me, I think he's still going to move the ball from the 20 to the 20. Now, how does Carolina react to that is kind of where I'm looking at the difference maker in this game. And I don't know enough about Carolina's defense, um, Ole Miss's offense, and Lane Kiffin's coaching acumen from 20 to goal line it really has never been there. It's really never been there. I'm looking for Shane Beamer and Carolina's defense to make a couple of stands on defense. They've got to keep Ole Miss out of the end zone, and they've got to build momentum, and they got to get hype and play together as a team when they make defensive stops in the red zone. This is how you take Lane Kiffin out of the game. Same thing Kentucky did. So back to my point, film. Please, Shane Beamer, watch film. Look at what Kentucky did to keep Lane Kiffin out of the end zone. It's a repeatable recipe. It happens every single year. Lane Kiffin does this every single year. It's just happening to happen a little earlier in the season. Usually by this time, Lane Kiffin done rattled off 7 wins. You know what I'm saying? Based on the way his schedule lines up. Hey, props to Kentucky, knocking them off. Great. I believe this game provides Shane Beamer at home with a sellout crowd and a motivated team, a talented, motivated team with just enough to get out of here with a win. I got Carolina by 3. I can't tell you what the score is going to be, but I got Carolina by 3. Home game and Lane Kiffin's inaccuracies as a coach is why they end up losing this game. They're going to spiral out of control like they always do. It just happened about 3 weeks earlier than it normally does.
Right.
Yeah. And my thing with this one is I think what a lot of it is going to have to do is the fact that a bigger piece of it is South Carolina's coming off a rest. You've had 2 weeks to sit back, get healthy, and game plan for this ball game versus Ole Miss, who doesn't get a break at all until after the LSU game, till they get their first bye. So I think that's going to carry a lot of weight, freshen up some legs, get Lenore's healthy, get Rocket healthy into this game. And Sean, we said it before we got on. If Lenoris doesn't go for whatever reason. He's listed as questionable by whatever metric these injury reports are coming out now with the SEC games. He's going to play. But by any metric, if he leaves this game, South Carolina does not win this game without Lenore Sellers. And same thing was said about the LSU game. If he stayed in the LSU game, I think they win the LSU game. I think they run away with it, actually. I don't think it's close. Because you look at how that game played out when Lenore's went out, the offense 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out for however many times in the third quarter. And that's where LSU made their charge in the third quarter in that game. And I don't want to like to keep going back to that game, but that's the closest game I can compare it to this one as far as this season and with this roster because of the fact of we looked and said the same things about the LSU game that we're saying now about this Ole Miss game. Can you show up? This is very much the history of South Carolina and Shane Beamer's teams outside of his signature wins that he gets one or two of every season where we had the Tennessee and Clemson one in 2022 and all that kind of stuff. But you look at this game and the LSU game, we said the same thing. These are very much one of those games where everybody's like, all right, you here? Are you here? Drew, you texted during that game. South Carolina's ready for SEC play. All of that. And this is another one of those games where it's either you're gonna fall on your face, or you're gonna show up to play. And I really think with this defense, I think this year they're ready here to show up to play. Their passing attack has gotten better each and every week. And I do think that will be a X factor if they can get the run game going. I think South Carolina receivers and Lenore Sellers' arm, which is underrated against Ole Miss's secondary, is where this game can kind of take off. Don't let them come out South Carolina in the first quarter and hit a long 60-yard touchdown pass to Jared Brown or finally get Nick Harbor on a streak down the sideline and take off like that, because then they really that place is going to erupt. They thought the LSU environment was bad. Wait until Saturday in South Carolina against this Ole Miss team. They've been waiting to get back into a big-time game ever since how that LSU game finished. It's a sold-out crowd. It's a garnered out. I don't like the name of that. I'd rather just do the blackout during the day. I know it's an afternoon game, but it's going to be a crazy environment in Willie B this Saturday when they come to town. And Ole Miss better do everything in their power to shut them up early, because if they stick around and actually start playing some defense, get even a 3-and-out, that place is going to erupt down there in Willie B. So I'm telling you, it's a recipe for success for South Carolina. But Shane Beamer, this is it. You've got a staple of recruits coming in. I've seen everybody decommit from these other schools. The top wide receiver commit out of the state just decommitted from Florida State. He's coming here for the third week in a row. He was here at the LSU game, came to the Akron game, here for the Ole Miss game. The same thing happened with Tennessee. After we beat Tennessee is when we got Dylan Stewart, when he committed. He came to that game and committed. This is you got to get this to start building this roster in the recruiting process. You got to get these kind of games to get this program, like you said, Drew, over that hump. You right there. You're looking over the edge. Yeah. What can you get this game so you can start projecting yourself, getting yourself up, getting ready to go play, go get this win? I think they can get it.
Yeah, and I think college football is the hardest thing to predict big upsets in, just because it can happen really any team at any time. But if there's ever an upset brewing, I think this is it brewing. I feel like it's really stirring up in the pot early in this week, and I feel like people can kind of feel it. Not so much of South Carolina really being a dominant team, but I think they just catch Ole Miss at the perfect time. And I don't think that is really because of the loss to Kentucky. I think even if they won that game, it still would have been a perfect time to catch them slipping.
Even more so.
To really kind of just get a home run hit on there. I got three keys to this game, and I think South Carolina is actually going to succeed on, and to be able to be the reasons why I think they're going to win the game. Number one, I think they're going to really break down Ole Miss's rushing defense. I don't think that's sad about Ole Miss's rushing defense being the top one in the country. It's really going to be staying at this. I got South Carolina getting at least over 120 yards on the ground. I got them being less than 2 turnovers. That means South Carolina cannot let that ball get more than 2 turnovers. Now, knowing South Carolina ball, they're going to let that one happen somewhere in the game. They're going to let one fall and flop out. It just happens. And then my third point is we got to be able to contain big plays early. I think that's the only really thing that could be too demoralizing for South Carolina to overcome is by a big play touchdown. Kind of like you said, if South Carolina gets one early, it could be erupting. I think it could be kind of like, we really the same old team that we
Deflate.
always was if it happens early. And I think that's something that Lane Kiffin is going to truly try to emphasize on his team to try to get him out of that funk of last week. So those are my 3 points, man. Really, I think if the South Carolina can take advantage of those 3 points, rushing, not committing too many turnovers, and then not being a victim of big plays, I think this is right in the realm of South Carolina to steal it. And I think that's something that we could really watch for. So South Carolina, to me, going to South Carolina, I don't think a lot of people do not agree with it, but I would honestly put it as a top 5 place to play in the country.
Yes.
Just because I've grown up there, I've seen teams come in there and fold and falter, and I know what that crowd's going to bring. In a 3:30 game, might as well be a
Don't
goddamn
matter.
night game for South Carolina.
Don't matter.
Put it in a night game because they're going to be out there going crazy, probably about to start around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
So by 3:30 in the afternoon, man, it's going to be a lot of people ready to see upset. And I think South Carolina, as a state, going what we've been through with this hurricane, man, they looking for that thing that could just set it off. And kind of how I feel about Georgia Alabama football, I think that's what type of firework game you're gonna see in this one right here. So I think South Carolina is poised to do it. Now I'm
Mhm.
gonna lose a lot of confidence if they don't get it done, just because of I don't think Ole Miss is what I've seen. I don't think is there. I think South Carolina can really take advantage of this team and beat them done. And if you can't beat Ole Miss now, I don't know if we're gonna get there in the future. So I'm just letting that know for South Carolina fans. I got faith in you. Do not let me down.
Yeah.
Do not let me down, South Carolina.
Hey, real
Oh,
real
yeah.
quick, real quick, Sean, before you give your last point.
Yeah.
For South Carolina fan base, and I meant to put on this in the beginning. Coming out of the first 4 games, this is exactly the way where we wanted to be. We thought we was going to be 3-1. Everybody around here. Now we had a chance to be 4-0, but it's exactly where we wanted to be. This middle stretch of these next 3 games is what everybody said. You got to steal one of them. Ole Miss, Bama, or Oklahoma at Oklahoma. This is your only home one out of the 3. You got to steal one. This is your most likely chance to do it. But go ahead, Sean.
Yeah. So what you do is if you Shane Beamer, you let Ole Miss navigate between the 20s, right? And you constrict in the red zone. I'm telling you, Ole Miss will fold if you play your best defense in the red zone. They'll fold. They are not built to score like that. They're built to score from beyond the 20, right? So Kentucky got them perfectly pegged. They are an incomplete team. You just got Carolina, you just got to show again, second week in a row, that Ole Miss is an incomplete team. I'm sitting here telling you, they're an incomplete team. Carolina just got to prove it, just like Kentucky did. And they'll win this game.